chainsaw without the blade on it.
It literally is.
Have you ever seen that meme that's like a picture of something uniquely American? Like sometimes it's monster trucks or sometimes it's a photo of the world's biggest truck stop. But whatever the photo is, the caption reads, "The European mind cannot comprehend this." Well, if you needed a photo that the American mind couldn't comprehend, I think a shot of the Italian MotoGP at the Mugello circuit in Italy would be my first choice. And I mean that in the best way possible. So let me explain. We've taken you to a MotoGP race before in Austin, Texas, but while each race around the world is the same in concept, the real-world experience is completely different, as my expat best friend from high school, Mike, and I found out firsthand when we drove his camper van down there from Switzerland and camped at Mugello for race weekend. Because you see, at Mugello, you don't sleep, or in Italian, al Mugello non si dorme. That's the official motto, and if you think that's because of all the excitement around the race, you're only half right. It's because Mugello is basically the Woodstock of MotoGP races. But you know what? That's what's so uniquely cool about it. MotoGP at Mugello is not just about racing. It's a celebration of anything and everything motorcycles. At Mugello, everyone's Italian, everyone's a race fan. And speaking of the racing, it's not too bad either. This is the Italian MotoGP at Mugello. I'm your host, Mark Long, and you're listening to Driven to Ride. So if you search for YouTube videos for MotoGP at Mugello, you're going to see tons of great racing clips. But what you won't immediately find are videos of tens of thousands of people who have come from literally all over the world and make as much noise as possible. The louder, the better. Sport bikes, modified leaf blowers, chainsaws with the blades taken off, scooters with the mufflers removed, and a horn added on. Anything that's got an engine is going to be revved all the way to the red line. And it's almost like some sort of motorized call and response with someone hitting the rev limiter on an R1. And then on the other side of the valley, someone else hears it and decides to respond with their amazingly loud leaf blower.
As Valentino Rossi would say, it is a very funny race. It is a very funny place. It's a fun place. It's a really beautiful place to be in. I recommend it to everybody.
That's Friné Velilla, who's responsible for handling all the media people throughout race weekend. She's kind of a veteran of helping run MotoGP races, including the one at Mugello.
Like you, like yourself, who's only been used to the American races,
Right.
to come here and see that we're racing in like the middle of the Tuscan mountains and the whole scene and the whole view is overwhelming. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, we're like in a valley surrounded by beautiful like forested foothills. There's old Italian villas like on the tops of these hills. I mean,
food is good.
Yeah. So it's a very unique experience, and we've only just got here. So because we're getting to you before the races start and everything, because your job basically only gets crazier from here, I imagine.
Yeah, well, my job is crazy since last week, because last week was already the setup of this race.
Okay.
Preparing the passes, the last confirmations, last minute requests. So my job starts even before the race starts setting up with all the credential screening and all the documents that I have to prepare for this race. And in this race, I'm thinking already about the next one. So when I'm in a race, I have part of the time I'm enjoying it, but the other half is preparing ahead.
Yeah, so you're a couple of steps ahead already.
I have to be, yes.
Well, speaking of your job, what is like your official title?
So my official title is the MotoGP Media Manager.
Okay.
And that entails being in charge of the media center in every one of the rounds that we go to. So I travel to all the circuits in the championship. That could be anywhere from 22 to 20. This year, 2 dropped out of the calendar. It's just going to be 20 races, plus some tests, some official testing as well. But don't feel sorry for me. I actually love this job.
Yeah, so I guess that was my next question is, you 22 races.
Yep.
That's almost half the year. And it's all around the world.
Yes. But it's not like I'm away the half of the year. It's 4 or 5 days, and then I go home.
Okay.
Then there's 1 week off, and then 4 or 5 days, and then I'm home. There's some races that are back to back, and then there's also the Asia Tour. And that does keep me away from home for a little bit longer time, but it's not like I'm away for months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel a little less bad for you now. So. But you are traveling all over the world.
I
mean,
am.
Can you tell me some of the farthest flung places you've been?
Well, the furthest one from where I am is Australia.
Okay.
And it's weird because at this point that I've been traveling for 15 years, even though I've been in the company for 20 years, I've been traveling in this position for 15.
Yeah.
And almost every race feels like my home race. Everybody's like,
Really?
oh, welcome to your home GP in Malaysia or in Australia,
Right.
in Japan. So it's really cool to be able to work with a group of people that is so different from the previous round that we've been in. Different culture, different language, different way of working. It's very different working with Indonesian people than it is working with Japanese people. But I mean, they're your coworkers, they're your work buddies in the end, and you've been seeing them year after year. So it's really cool. And of course, the European races are also like our neighbors too, because
Sure,
I'm
yeah.
from Spain.
Right.
So I'm from Barcelona. I'm from
Okay.
Spain. And we have 3 races in Spain. So all of these are already my home GP. One
Yeah.
in Portugal, which is same time zone. We could almost drive there.
Basically another home
Yeah.
race for you. Yeah.
Now I'm very fortunate in being able to say that I feel very welcome, and we all feel very welcome. It's really nice going to all these countries, and they really await the GP. The volunteers that work in the media center, they're super eager to come work, even if it's just volunteering
Yeah.
for the event.
Nice.
It's amazing, yeah.
So you probably know how to pack pretty well, right?
You know, that's the worst part of my job.
Really? Still? After
really
15
bad,
years?
Really, maybe I'm a little better than people that just go on one trip per year.
Yeah.
But I should be better. I should be better by now.
The difference between a flyover race and a race on the European continent are two completely different things.
The first thing you notice is that in Europe we have trucks,
Right.
and in the overseas races we don't. Everything travels by cargo with 4 or 5 different planes, and in Europe everything travels by land.
Right.
So everything is packed in trucks, and everything goes by road.
Okay.
And that also sets up the paddocks differently. In Europe, you see every box is aligned with a different truck. So you'll see the teams by color. Like you see the 2, the VR46 that are bright yellow. Then
Yeah.
you'll have the Gresini ones which are this lavender color. Then you see the Ducatis.
Yeah.
And they're all lined up neat, like precision. And like by the millimeter. There's you come on Wednesday and there's this guy lining up the trucks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. His job is to line up the trucks, and you can't go beyond your line because
Right.
then everything goes crooked, and the space is so limited.
Mm-hmm.
We have to fit the Moto E paddock, the offices, which are also like a transformer, like assembled, and all these trucks start arriving, and they're like transformers. They open sideways, they open up, and they convert into these massive, they look like buildings.
Yeah, they kind of look like homes
Yeah,
almost.
yeah.
What about like the energy versus, like, say, like in Austin? You know, what's the energy like in a European race, or maybe just specifically here at Mugello? What's the energy like compared to other races?
Well, Mugello has been historically a very Valentino Rossi kind of home
Sure.
feel. In fact, Mugello used to be called Mugello, and giallo means yellow,
Okay.
and that's Valentino Rossi's color.
Right.
People used to camp here, and the motto for Mugello is you don't sleep in Mugello. Al Mugello non si dorme. Because people would be at night with chainsaws in the campsite.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my
Super loud
gosh.
concerts, campfires, music, just
Okay.
people hanging out with each other.
And again, if you forgot what that sounds like,
And it was a very like familiar scene, like a festival almost.
Sure,
like,
yeah, totally feels like a music
The
festival.
good feeling of like way back when, like a Woodstock kind of.
Okay, yeah.
And you don't have that in Austin.
yeah.
People in the States, they don't follow racing like we do in Europe, and
Mm-hmm.
they haven't grown with racing. Also, in America, racing has maybe, or even motorcycles have this negative connotation
Okay.
that's sometimes related to like Hell's Angels or, Sons of Anarchy,
Right,
all
right,
that.
yeah.
And here we put kids on bikes by age 6.
Mm-hmm.
We have roads, we have off road, and then people just grow with a bike between their legs. You know,
Right, yeah.
it's this culture that we have.
Yeah, it's totally different. Like, I mean, driving here from, more in Italy, we stopped at a couple different places and there's people in Harley jackets and everything. And I was really surprised to see any kind of Harley Davidson.
And that's not even our main target.
Right, yeah.
But even though we did race with Harleys in Austin with King of the Baggers race, which was amazing for us. That's new for us.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it.
That was pretty wild.
So here in MotoGP, we have different manufacturers. We have Honda, the Japanese factories, Honda, Yamaha, and then we have the Italian ones, Aprilia, Ducati. But you see Aprilias on the street here. You see Ducatis on the street. You see all these bikes.
Right.
That they're the ones that you use to go to work. And then the beauty of it is that you come see these prototypes because MotoGP bikes are prototypes as opposed to World Superbike. World Superbike are street bikes, but ours are prototypes. And
right.
So it's like your dream projection of your ideal bike. If you own a Honda, like, oh my God, this is what a Honda can do. I'm not a rider. I have a scooter. It's a 300cc scooter. I still need a motorcycle license too.
Okay.
But is that everybody in MotoGP, most of the fan base has ridden a motorcycle. But you don't have to be a rider to enjoy the show, I think. I think we have an exciting enough race to be able to be enjoyed by anyone, whether you're a rider, a racer, or not.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. So if you have a scooter, you're not a biker or a
No,
rider,
I'm not
really.
a biker. I'm not a biker.
So then how did you end up at working for the biggest, most crazy motorcycles in racing in the world?
I actually started as a translator.
Okay.
I am from Spain and I studied translation and interpreting. So my first gig, you can call it, was as a translator. I used to translate the website way back when. You can imagine how websites were back in 2004.
Yeah,
they weren't as complex as they are now.
Right.
The following was also pretty small. And that's what I did. And I changed into different departments within the house. And then there's opportunity came for me to become media manager because the previous media manager wanted to stop traveling.
Sure.
So I was offered that role, which I embraced. And I mean, I've been the longest running MotoGP media manager.
Yeah. Wow. That's impressive, man. Well, the last question, I mean, you've been doing this. You've been with Dorna for 20 years. You've been traveling for 15 years. You said you're the longest running media manager. What keeps you coming back every year?
I think it's the traveling.
You think so?
I mean, no, I'm just kidding. I do love my job and it's very challenging. I love the new things that we've had to reinvent. For example, just going from analog to digital.
Sure.
Just going from paper press to digital press. Going from a wonderful time where everyone was happy and the audiences were massive to going to a pandemic and surviving the pandemic. Going to races with no spectators, that was a shock. It was like sad because the riders were celebrating and there was no one on track. It was so quiet. There was no traffic. That was the only good thing. But all the travel restrictions and the PCR tests and the paperwork that we had to do and how we had to reinvent the media, the Zoom media scrums. You saw the media scrums today downstairs with all the writers coming to the media center and speaking to all the journalists. They do this every day. So from Thursday to Sunday, all writers in the grid, they come up to talk to the journalists. But they used to do that before COVID in their individual hospitalities. So Valentino Rossi would speak at his hospitality, and maybe at the same time, you'd have Marc Marquez speak in his hospitality, which is at the other end of the paddock.
Right.
With COVID, since we had to keep everyone in one place, and it could only be done by Zoom, we made writers come to the press conference. We'd put them in a computer, and we'd set these time slots so that they wouldn't clash with each other. And then when the computers were done and we were done with Zoom, we were able to maintain that, more or less trouble-free and clash-free, have the writers come up and talk to journalists in one place. And I think that's a great evolution. I hope the journalists appreciate it.
Sure, yeah.
The writers, maybe not so much, but they still do the effort. And they have this massive coverage that otherwise they wouldn't have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's cool to see you reining in chaos a little bit. And I don't know how you stay so calm all over, because again, dealing with people from all different nationalities, all different, radio, TV, writing, all different mediums, different country every week, just about it. I mean, it's impressive. So,
Well,
but
thank you.
It's got to be fun. So.
It is fun. It is fun.
If somebody gets the chance, why should they come see a MotoGP race specifically in Europe? Or maybe here specifically at Mugello?
It's a great opportunity. Like, it's the excuse, like when you travel to a concert or when you travel to a race, you come see the most exciting show on earth.
Right.
I mean, there is nothing like it. It's short and sweet. It's a 40-minute race. You get to spend the whole day, though, because you come and you watch. If you come on a Friday, you can still come see the practice sessions, get a feel of the ambience, and enjoy the local culture, the local cuisine, hang out with the locals, go to the campsite, or maybe stay in a nice hotel. Saturday, we have some more qualifying sessions and the sprint, which is amazing. Me, myself, my attention span is quite short. And sometimes, because the MotoGP race is at lunchtime, it's after lunchtime for Spain. And the sprint, man, it's like 20 minutes. It's super crazy. Everybody goes all in, and it's an amazing show. Like, I couldn't say even more exciting than the race per se, but it gets close enough.
Yeah.
And so you have that on Saturday at 3, and then on Sunday you have the 3 races, and you have a complete 3-day program. Sometimes there's DJs, sometimes there's concerts. There's always something to do at the racetracks. And that's a great excuse, if you want to call it an excuse, or a great reason to travel. And you could, even some of the European races, there's 2 of them back to back. For example, Barcelona and Mugello in Italy. So you could do 2 for 1. Stay out 2 weeks.
Speaking of, we ran into another pair of Americans, JJ and his son Connor, who were already in Spain on vacation, but found their way over to Italy.
Exactly.
Is this your first time at Mugello?
This is my first time at Mugello, yes.
What do you think about it?
Beautiful. Absolutely love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's like there's this beautiful valley, and then there's just an amazing racetrack.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. Everything about it is just beautiful place. Beautiful weather, too.
Yeah, we've gotten pretty lucky so far. You said this, we were talking a little bit before, this is not your first MotoGP race. Can you kind of tell me what races you've been to in the past for MotoGP?
Yeah, so my first event was in 2006 at Laguna Seca. Probably my favorite ever, because Nicky won and then won the championship that year. And then since then, I went to Indianapolis one year. I think that was 2008. And then I've done COTA 4 or 5 times. 2 years ago, I did Austria, Spielberg, and then this year here. So
nice. Yeah. So what brought you here to Mugello? I mean, obviously it's all over. There's a bunch of places all over the world. You've done quite a few. But what about Mugello is special that you wanted to come here?
Bucket list. This is like number 1 on my list of tracks I wanted to go watch. So we did a family trip to Spain, and my wife surprised me with my birthday with added trip to Italy to come to Mugello for this trip for me. So my son Connor and I got to come together, and this is Connor's first MotoGP race. So
okay, can we ask him a question or two, or can I ask you a question or two, or? So this is your first MotoGP race. What do you think so far?
I love it. It's just amazing seeing all these racers out here.
It's pretty cool that they're just like out here. You can kind of see them as real people. It's pretty loud, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very loud.
Cool. So what's been your favorite part so far?
I think just the atmosphere. The engines revving, the crowd screaming, the smoke, just the whole Italian experience at a MotoGP race, I think, has probably been it for me, yeah.
So what about the racing? Considering the fastest anyone has ever gone in MotoGP happened right here at Mugello, which was 366.1 kilometers per hour or 227.4 miles an hour by South African Brad Binder, the word exciting is a bit of an understatement. And ironically enough, the quietest part of the whole weekend was during the Moto E races. But Italian Francesco Bagnaia or Pecco as he's affectionately known, won the sprint race on Saturday. Plus, Pecco went and won the main race on Sunday as well. And winning a sprint race and the main race is pretty impressive. I was curious if Mugello has always been this loud, this crazy, this passionate. So we caught up with someone back in the U.S. who's been to Mugello a few times, Freddie Spencer, also known as Fast Freddie. Was it that loud? Were the crowds and the people and all that loud back in the day in '85, just like it was like a couple weekends ago?
Yeah.
Because I was not prepared for deconstructed chainsaws and leaf blowers and
I'm not so sure about that leaf blower. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, that guy. He's relentless on that, isn't he? I mean, it's a lot, but the crowd is that wild back in '85 than today. So it's always been, that's what has always made racing at that level at the year in that really a lot of people either feel like they belong there because you can feel the intensity of the crowd.
Yeah, you sure can.
And when I won the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, one of my dreams as a kid was to win the Italian Grand Prix. When I started road racing, and I was 12, 13 years old, and so I wanted to win the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Because it was the main. At that time, specifically, where the Italian Grand Prix was. By the time I got into Grand Prix, Monza was not as, there were other tracks. Mazzano, Mugello had been built, but it just worked out where in '83, it was the only year for me that I raced there. The Italian Grand Prix was at Monza, and so I showed up there and I'd heard about the Tifosi, of course, the Ferrari. It's mainly associated with F1. But at that year, it was crazy, and I happened to win. I won the race, and so I have my bike, and the crowds are coming over the stands, just like you picture it, Formula One. It's the same thing, and they're just filling up. They're filling up the front straightaway, and they're all coming over and pulling and stuff, and so. Always, my mechanic George would be there, and take the 3-cylinder. Always, it would work, So the bike started going. So it's like, okay, there's George, and so then just like maybe 15 seconds go by, 20 seconds go by in the crowd, and they pat me on the head and stuff. And George comes up, he goes, "Freddie, where's the bike?" And I go, "You took it." He goes, "No, I didn't." We look up, and these fans they're just like. Taking the bike down the front straightaway, and the crowd's cheering, and it's like, and the George is running. It was just crazy, But that was not uncommon, Really? And at the end of the year at Imola, after Kenny and I, the last race of the championship, and I won the world championship. Kenny won the race, and we're in the car afterwards, and there's video of us just going around the track, and the crowds are just all over the fences and stuff. It's just, it's the passion. That's the thing. The passion that they have for it and the love of it is again what makes it such an event.
It's interesting. You mentioned that they have a sense of belonging there, like it's their place, and I think you really hit the nail on the head. I mean, people come in by the thousands, and they just make themselves at home wherever they can, and you can tell like that passion is really there, and do you think that's what makes it different than maybe a flyaway race or like, maybe a U.S. based race like Austin?
Well, listen, we did races. I know what it's like to be at Mugello and do a Grand Prix with no spectator, not one, right?
Really?
When we were doing the behind closed doors.
Oh, okay.
And, there's that extreme, and then there's the other, and then the flyways and the U.S. races, they all fall in between.
Sure.
I've seen Laguna. Like when we started back after the World Championship rounds in the mid 2000s. When there was 103,000 people at Laguna, it was sold out. I think in Laguna, because of California and just sport bikes, and it's the motorcycle aspect of it has always been and the love of motorcycles. That's what drove the passion and enthusiasm. And you see it in Europe still today, even though there's as many people there or more, obviously, that drive cars, to the races. And their love for it is in a different way. Their respect, and some of it is in their families. Most of the young people there, their fathers, mothers, grandfathers, kind of brought them into it. That we don't have so much here,
Sure, yeah.
We do, but it's just different, But we would see that in California. You see it certainly. You go to Japan, it's different because of the personality, the characteristics of the fans themselves. They're a lot more
the culture,
like that.
yeah.
But the culture, but their love for it is still the same. They'll stand in the pouring rain to meet you, and they're so enthused. But their personality is different.
And at Mugello, it's amped up to 11.
Yes, yeah. The viewing there is good though, because you can see from, if you get into those positions that you were in, you can see a lot of different things.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, it's nestled in this like beautiful valley, kind of like in the middle of nowhere a little bit. Like there's not a huge town. I think the next biggest town is either Bologna or Florence, and they're about an hour away, I think, right?
Yeah. Florence is about 40 minutes away, 45 minutes away, and then Bologna is an hour and 15 minutes or so. Well, it depends. It took us, we left Sunday night, and it's 75 kilometers. I was able to leave around about an hour after the race. And so we thought, okay, it was going to the airport in Bologna. And we went 5 kilometers in 2 hours.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, but that's just the crowd, Once you get to the freeway, you're fine. But you're right; it's all little roads, but that's the beauty of it. I stay in a little
100%.
Yeah, I stay in a little apartment, and the man and wife have the apartment upstairs, and it's beautiful,
Enthusiasm from the fans aside, Mugello is a pretty special track for Freddie for actually make that 2 reasons.
It's the first place that I won an Italian World Championship race. The 82 race I won there. It's called the San Marino Grand Prix. It's my first year in 82. And then I won my first double championship there in 85 for the season. And it was not only the first double, but it was by far the hardest race weekend. Because the 500 race, because of TV, was first that day. And so it was hot. You report, this week was beautiful weather there. It was just absolutely beautiful. Most of the time it's extremely warm. Mm-hmm. The heat can be very, very, very oppressive there, and very warm. And so track temperatures are high, and it's hard on the riders, hard on machines a little bit. But I had a hard 500 race and was able to win the race. And so I'm standing on the podium. And this is what it was like in those days. I'm still on the podium, and they're playing national anthem, and stops, and I go to pop the champagne. I wasn't going to drink any because obviously I had the 250 race.
Right.
And so I turned to Eddie Lawson, and Eddie, I'll never forget this. He looks up at me and he goes, "Better you than me," because he knew because the 250 bikes were going out of the cold grid. Be like them coming out of pit lane for the sighting lap, we do today. Mm-hmm. But they were coming out. Literally, I'm still on the podium.
Oh my God.
It just ended. So I normally would have a few minutes, where they have, as you see, between the Moto2 race and the MotoGP race now, with all the activities and things, it's about 40 minutes.
Yeah, you got time.
In those days, if it was a clean race, they would just, go right to the next race.
Wow.
And so I hurry up, drink a bottle of water as fast as I can. I didn't even change leathers or anything. Get to the grid, get on the bike, and go out there. And I'm sitting on the grid to begin the warm up lap. And in those days, it was push start.
Oh, really?
We didn't start doing that. Was always Grand Prix race in the European. From the time it started in 49 to 87 was push starting.
Okay.
So there was kind of a technique to that, and these bikes would fire. But anyway, so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, because I feel okay,
Sure.
I know, long run, tough race, but I feel good. So, but I'm thinking the only thing I got to make sure of is I got to get a good start.
Right.
You know, I guess because Carlos and Tony's running good pace, I got to get a good start. So we go around for the side lap, and I'm sitting there on the grid. And I thought about this because the stewards room overlooked the start-finish line where we at the, and it hadn't changed much at Mugello. And so I was just thinking about the riders are lucky today. Two things: they get to live start, and it's not so hot. But I'm sitting. We come back around to do the start of the race. We do the warm-up lap, then you kill the engines, and you're sitting there, and it's so quiet. The build-up, and even the crowd, you could hear a pin drop.
Wow!
You know? And so we go to push start, and I'm pushing, and I swear I'm just pushing, and bikes are just going by me, and I'm thinking the bike will start, but it's me. It's like my legs all of a sudden it just like hit me, right?
Yeah.
And so I throw my leg over and I get it started. I come around the first lap, I'm 19th.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Which was the main thing I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I just won, you know, and it's like I would always tell riders, and I told Nikki Hayden, when I was working with Nikki before we went to Grand Prix, and I said the most important thing is, and I told the story because I was tired and it took me a few laps to kind of get my second wind, but then it's just one corner at a time, one rider at a time, one lap at a time, and I just methodically kind of went through and I took the lead with about 6 laps to go.
Okay.
And won both races. And I remember I was sitting on my bed afterwards, and it's just, I had both trophies, and I was still in my leathers. So that in my motorhome, and I didn't have the energy hardly to get my leathers off.
I can imagine. Yeah. Jeez.
It's just, but it's so, obviously rewarding, but, yeah, so that place holds us. And it's the racetrack too. You know, it's technical, it's high speed, but it just challenges you mentally because, you know, you can see in the passes, you know, and made at the end of the MotoGP race, so the great battles we had in some of the other races. You know, there's different lines, and anyway, it's such an amazing track, and it's the Italian Grand Prix.
Just in case, you know, somebody doesn't know, you do have a couple of race titles under your belt as well. Can you share that? Can you share those with us?
Yes. Well, I've won three world championships. I've won 2 500 and the 250, and which would be the equivalent today of MotoGP and Moto2. And the 250 and the 500 I won in the same season. In 85. So it'd be like winning both those championships in the same year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just to put it into context, it's almost like I guess for baseball, I guess it's like playing and winning a AAA game and then literally turning around and going to play in the majors. I mean, it's kind of the same equivalent, right?
Yeah. In many respects, yes. But even more so, it would be more of a challenge because at least the baseball is the same and the dimensions are the same.
Sure. Yeah.
See, the challenge was, Mark, is you're going down the straightaway at 200 miles an hour, and I say at Hockenheim, that day in the rain in Hockenheim, and you're doing 200 miles an hour into a third gear chicane. And on the 250, I'm running 160 miles an hour. And I just got off the 250 and then now I'm on the 500. And, and you know, that first lap, I'm running in there with Christian or Eddie and these guys at 200 miles an hour. And I don't use braking markers. I don't use the signage, you know, like the you know, where it's 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters. Except at Daytona, and that's different reasons. But most of mine is all done by feel. Now that was probably a benefit for me, again, because I just would trust that so much, trust that in intuitive, instinctive side, and I had such a good grasp of that. But those things is a little bit different as far as the skill level. Yes, but the comparison would be. And not to get too specific, but the comparison would be is more like if you're a Formula One race and you race a Formula 2 car against Formula 2 drivers, and then you get into cars in a Formula One race against
Right.
Lewis Hamilton and these guys, or like, again, because that way it's the equipment is what's different for us,
Okay.
and certainly, and the skill level's not even changed because the 250 guys that raced against Tony May, Carlos Lovato, I mean, they ended up winning 7 world titles between them,
It's one of the most beautiful tracks in the world, nestled in a valley in the middle of Tuscany, and also hosts one of the most ridiculous parties that's turned up till 11 all weekend. Nothing can prepare you for Mugello, because al Mugello non si dorme. And it's pretty much true. I think from Friday to Sunday, Mike and I probably got about 9 hours of sleep, but honestly, it was worth every missed minute. After getting back to Switzerland, where Mike lives, I wanted to see what he thought of his first MotoGP experience.
It was a lot. It was a lot of everything. It was.
Well, actually, let's go back. How was your first MotoGP race, period?
My first MotoGP race was a fun experience, all in all. As strictly a MotoGP experience. Getting to see the various races and the various qualifyings, and then the final race was just incredible. Right? It was the power, the emotion, everything that had been going on the entire weekend kind of filed down to this one point. And then, of course, the people who come to the event to spectate and be a part of this spectator function.
The fans.
The fans, as it were.
So what did you think when we first pulled up to get into the camping ground? Like, what, after getting through security and all that, what was going through your head when we first were ascending down the hill into Mugello?
I thought to myself, wow, there's all this space here. That's incredible. What are they going to do with it all? Yeah, I mean, it had kind of a carnival feel to it somehow with all the music and the motorcycles. Just everything that has to do with 2 wheels is on in full irreverence. Saturday, there was quite a bit more people that had filled in a lot. a lot.
So you said, seeing how insane the races actually are and everything. Is there a moment that stands out to you that we witnessed that just encapsulated the whole thing?
Yeah, sitting up at the berm just past the grandstands, you can still see the start-finish line.
Right, yeah.
And just witnessing these guys go from standstill to all out, and then just the noise and the drama of it. And imagine the amount of engineering that goes into these things, that they're able to be as stable and as powerful and as damn loud, man.
Yeah, they're pretty loud.
Just unfathomably loud. So then I wonder what Mugello looks like when it's not race season.
Well, I'll tell you, it's probably a lot quieter.
I'll bet it is, Mark.
So when you started hearing all the engines and all the noises and not just the motorcycle engines, but the leaf blowers, the chainsaws.
That I was not expecting. I've been at wild campgrounds before, but this was unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I noticed all the different nationalities that were there. I mean, you had people from the UK. Mm-hmm. We found some Americans.
Yeah.
We found Australians.
Yeah.
We saw license plates, obviously for Italy, but for a lot of Germany. France.
A lot of France.
So, I mean, people descend from all over into this little valley.
Totally.
Where there's this little racetrack.
Yeah.
And after having the weekend or the adventure behind us, what's the one thing that stands out? If I in 2 weeks, somebody was so you heard the word Mugello, just as a side conversation, what image would pop into your head?
The one thing that stands out about Mugello has to be the people there, the vast, broad spectrum of ultimately race fans. Even if you're not a racing fan, even if you're not a MotoGP fan for that matter, for that weekend you are, and everybody kind of unites around that.
Do you think that even if I had told you, prepared you, said okay, it's gonna be loud, all the time. Do you think that would have prepared you for Mugello?
No, absolutely not. It was fun. I mean, there is something so silly. What was it? Saturday morning, a dude woke us up with a leaf blower.
Yeah.
He walked through the campground all the way to the end of our cul-de-sac with a leaf blower in full rev.
Woke you up.
Sure as hell did. And he was happy to have done it. And you're frustrated because you just got woken up by a leaf blower.
On purpose.
On purpose. But there is, this comedic insanity to it that you can't not laugh at. And then you kind of rub the sleep from your eyes and realize that, oh yeah, I still am in La La Land. This like undertone of impending excitement that the race is tomorrow, that everything that's been going on is leading up to this, and we're all kind of here to bear witness to that. Until then, let's drink and dance and be loud for this one precious moment where we're allowed to do that for some reason. Mugello, man.
You know, I don't think I could say it any better. Thanks for listening to this special episode of Driven to Ride. Big thanks to Dorna for having us out at the MotoGP race. Special thanks to Friné and Freddie for sitting down to talk with us. Huge thanks to Mike Fisher for experiencing the whole thing with me, as well as driving a vehicle far too big for Europe all the way there and all the way back. And a special thanks to Matthew Miles, who made this all possible. Thanks for listening to Driven to Ride. Interact with us and check out full unedited conversations, photos, interviews, video interviews, plus other goodies on YouTube or Instagram at Driven to Ride Podcast. Or you can check us out at driventoridepodcast.com. And make sure you leave us a rating and review from wherever you get your podcasts, too. If you have an idea for an episode or a guest, or you want to invite us out on an adventure, email us, hello@driventoridepodcast.com. Driven to Ride is wholly owned by Flint Rock LLC, made possible with help from Matthew Miles, and written, hosted, and produced by me, Mark Long. We'll see you out there.